get into the weeds here.
Cool. Yeah. I think it's really, really important for us to talk about. So we're pretty excited. Another thing I want to note is that we are going to be recording this session. So if you don't want people to see, you don't have to keep your camera on. But otherwise, I guess just be mindful that we're recording.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right. So this session is about gaining support from family. I always say family is important, but also friends, right? I mean, friends are the family you choose, you know? So sometimes it's important to gain their support. So yeah, friends and family. It's probably what it should have said, but it doesn't. So let's see here. All right. So what is this session about? I think this is where me and Sam can talk about our experiences a little bit, but when going to grad school, oftentimes, well, every time it's completely different than undergraduate. Undergraduate, you're generally, a little bit younger. You have that family support. Your family wants you to go to get an education. And like my family, for instance, thought that a bachelor's degree, like, why would you need anything else? That's it. I mean, you're the first in the family to get a bachelor's degree. You should be able to go conquer amazing things and be more successful than anybody else in the family, type of thing. But oftentimes I've found that an undergraduate degree is the cost of entry into a career, but a graduate degree is like what you need to do to advance in a lot of times. Or we hit glass ceilings, unfortunately, because we don't have those connections. Yesterday Adrian Martinez mentioned that you're not just a first generation college student. Oftentimes you're a first generation working professional, you're a first generation manager, the first generation thing continues to go, and you don't have those connections that a lot of people have once they enter the workforce. So when I wanted to go and get a master's and MBA, my family just literally didn't understand. Like, I don't get it. I don't know why would you do that? You have a bachelor, you already have a degree. So it was a tough conversation, and it's something that I actually learned more about this at a conference. I was at a marketing conference, and we were talking about how to get more students of color and diversity, equity, and inclusion into grad programs. Because when you get into grad programs, it's predominant, like really, really white across the board at most universities, other than like the like historical Black colleges like HBCs and stuff. That's a little bit different, but for the most part, I mean, you get there and it's nobody looks like us. Nobody's going through what we're going through. So how do we market to students of color? And the big thing was like creating those conversations at home. And so me and Sam, when we were kind of brainstorming this stuff, it was a topic that nobody's really talking about. I always talk about it from a marketing perspective because I'm marketing to potential graduate students. And it has helped. We've seen our numbers go up here at MSU Denver. But it is an important factor. Before I started my MBA, I had a son. He was 3 years old at the time. And I wanted to make sure that when I had class on Mondays and Wednesday nights, that he was going to be with somebody that, and he's going to be safe and taken care of. And then also that I'm going to have that support when he comes to me and he wants to play and I unfortunately can't play,
Right.
So my wife can jump up and play with him, or my, his grandma, or, he's stayed at like my friends' houses because my wife works a second job on Monday nights. So grandma's not feeling good, he'll go over to Uncle Ramon's, my buddy's house. And without that support system, I would be missing class and I wouldn't have the ability to get my work done. And yeah, I don't know, Sam, did you want to talk about your experience? Your experience is a little bit different, way different.
Yeah, and that's why I was really excited for Rico and I both to be talking with you all, is because we had different paths, different experiences. So for me, I just trailblazed through my my undergraduate degree. So I finished within 4 years, and I was very lucky because I am a first generation student, but I had really, really good mentors that somehow I just met, and they really believed in me, and they were just like, we're going to help you get to where you want to go. And so they not only, helped me personally, but like academically, they just really guided my experience. So I was able to figure out what I wanted to do really quickly. And so I knew I wanted to go to graduate school, but I didn't necessarily take the time to explain that to my family. And I wasn't married, I don't have kids. So at that time, it was really my parents and my siblings. And for me, I'm the second oldest. And so I had a lot of responsibility with my younger brother. And when I moved out to go to college, it really, I would say, negatively impacted my little brother, because I was the one who primarily, took care of him and helped him out and was there when my mama had to work or my stepdad, things like that. So I was always taking care of him. And so when I moved out, it was this huge empty spot that my family then had. And so I think that they were kind of like, okay, when she graduates, then all of this will go back to normal. They were really looking forward to when I finished, and they were really proud of me, but they thought I would just be done after I finished my bachelor's degree. And then when I decided to go on and get my master's, they were kind of excited, but didn't really understand like why I would do that. It's like, didn't you already spend 4 years getting your degree? Like, why do you need to go on and do more? And so that conversation with them was really difficult. And then especially for me, like with my little brother, because it was going to be even more time and sacrifices between not going to family functions, and sometimes for me, I'm pretty religious, and so I go to church sometimes I would go like 3 times a week when I was younger and during this time. And my family would miss me because they'd always be there, and so sometimes I would miss because I had to do schoolwork and I had to do classes. And so I had this, again, like this big void, I think, in my family. And so they were like, man, like, why would you do this again to yourself and to us? I think that they kind of took it like I was doing it to them. And that was really, really hard for me. And it made it hard my entire experience because, I'm not going to lie, and I still want to encourage you all to go to grad school, but there's definitely times where I was so challenged and so pushed that I just felt like I could not do it anymore, like emotionally, mentally, physically, academically, every way that you can be challenged. I was definitely challenged in grad school. And so then I would just sometimes like break down and cry, and I would go to my mama and I would be like, this is happening. And, I'm like freaking out about whatever's going on and whatever I'm struggling with. And my mama's first response every time would be like, well, why don't you just quit? Why don't you just drop out? And, her perspective of trying to help me was like, okay, well, if this is stressing you out, just don't do it. And that didn't help me. And so hopefully we'll have some tips for you all to kind of work through these things. But it was really difficult for my family to understand, why I was making the decision, why I was taking on extra stress. And then even like I said, while I was there, why am I going to keep pushing myself to do something that doesn't seem like it's helping me in any way?
Yeah, no, I agree. I gave one of my friends permission if I quit to come over and kick me in the pills.
Mm-hmm.
Like no matter how bad it gets,
Mm-hmm.
do not let me quit. And the last quarter was a breaking point. I at one point was like, I'm ready to just be done. And this quarter is easier, luckily, and it's my last quarter, but you
Mm-hmm.
will get to that point and you need that support system to be like, you're not quitting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not happening.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, so we'll jump into it. So how to start the conversation. This can be tough. A lot of times this is obviously the first hurdle, but a lot of times the biggest hurdle is having that
Mm-hmm.
real conversation of what to expect, what's coming. It's almost like telling people that a tsunami is coming and you're going to battle it on your own and keep them from taking any of the water on, but in
Mm-hmm.
reality they're going to take water on too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So definitely for me, it was starting with my academic journey so far, how hard I worked. They definitely saw, your family sees how hard you're working through
Mm-hmm.
undergrad. And at the point in time where I was applying for grad school, my career was kind of fizzling. It wasn't going up anymore.
Mhm.
And, they had seen me and they had seen the frustrations, and I was sharing that, so I started out with just talking about how hard I worked and how proud I was of my accomplishments thus far, but that I'm just like hitting this glass ceiling that I just can't seem to break through. A lot of it from my situation was I started at MSU Denver, but I graduated from the University of Miami in Florida, which gave me a great network in Florida, but did not give me a great network here in Denver. So when I moved back to Denver to be closer to my family, I don't have a professional network here. So it was really tough. And, I was going to networking events, and it was just, I just couldn't seem to get ahead.
Mhm.
So that was definitely like sharing that with them, sharing my career, and then my aspirations. This is what I want. This is where I see myself.
Mhm.
This is a really tough conversation to have if you're going to grad school thinking that you're going to figure things out in grad school.
Mhm.
You should always have things figured out pretty well before going to grad school. Where where's this extra money you're about to spend and extra time you're going to spend? Where's it going to take you? What's your plan?
Mhm.
So yeah, I had this line of inspirations, these things that I think would make me happy. Um, so I had like a half baked idea, right? Um, and I knew that I wasn't going to get there without additional schooling. And then talking about the next and last thing for me was talking about our life today and what we're doing, and how Luke gets to school, and how Luke gets taken care of, and how my wife gets taken care of, and the time that I spend with her, and the time I spend with my mom and my grandparents, and how grad school would fit into that.
Mhm.
Kind of the last part of the conversation. And being honest and letting your family know that there will be times that grad school is going to have to take priority, and I'm going to miss some of those birthdays, and
Mhm.
I might miss a movie night or a barbecue. And it's not because I don't want to be there. I would rather be there and not nose deep in a finance book,
Mhm.
I would, but I have to get this stuff done.
Mhm.
So, Sam, what do you want to jump in with?
I, again, with my experience, I really do not remember ever sitting down with my mama, especially because my mama is the, strong Latina that has so many opinions that she always needs to tell me. But I never sat down with her, and I never sat down with my brothers and talked to them about, why I wanted to go to graduate school. Well, I guess I kind of did, because my degree is in student affairs and higher education. So I knew I really wanted to work with college students. And so they knew that. They knew I was really passionate about what I was going into and what I was going to study. But they didn't really know like why I needed to do a master's degree and why that was important in accomplishing this step. And so I really like, Rico's experience that he actually, kind of did that with his wife and his son a little bit. Maybe he'll share more of that, but I did not. I just was like, this is what I'm doing, and I knew myself, like, because of my really good mentors, like I knew this is what I needed to do, but I didn't help my family understand that piece of, it's literally the key to getting into higher ed. You got to have some kind of master's degree, and if you want to move up and things like that, or you have to have additional education, things to set you apart. I didn't talk to them about that. I didn't talk to them about like, oh, help me make more money. I didn't mention anything like that. And like I said, they do know that I'm really passionate about what I do, but to this day, sometimes they still don't really understand like what my job is. And so I wish I would have included them more in my experience and talked to them about some of these things and, what I was trying to accomplish to, in the end, help them. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned now that I'm not a graduate student is, being able to help my family financially was a huge goal of mine and wanting to pursue my bachelor's and my master's degree because I was like, I want to be financially stable for them because my family just wasn't. And now I'm kind of able to tell them, be like, yeah, I can help you with this financially because I sacrificed this time with you for 6 years in school, which totally stunk. But now I'm able to help you in these ways. And I think that that's really powerful to be able to talk to your families about early, because again, now they're kind of seeing, oh, okay, you are able to help us, and you do know more about certain things that we haven't been able to do yet, like buying a home or something. But I'm helping that make that connection, that schooling is really the biggest piece of that. And then for how graduate school fits in, I wish that, so I told you about the conversation with my mama where she'd be like, just quit, like, we'll take care of you. You can move back in. She would always tell me stuff like that. And it was totally out of love. It wasn't out of like trying to sabotage my experience at all. It was just that she didn't have the tools herself, because my mama did not, finish college. I'm first gen, you have to remember that about ourselves, is like our families need you to help coach them on how to support you. And they need you to tell them, like, okay, like Rico with his friend, like, if I think about dropping out, tell me no, or tell me, tell me all of my, for me, I like people to build me up. I'm like, tell me my strengths, tell me what I'm good at, remind me my passion and like why I'm doing this in the first place. Remind me like how I want to help my family. And that's my motivation, bring back my motivation, help me in those moments of darkness by saying these things to me or doing these things for me. And I think if you can make that really clear with your families, like, I need this, this, and this when I'm in those dark times, it'll make it so much better, so much smoother. And then again, explaining to them, like what Rika was saying, like, I'm not going to be able to be present for certain events where, like I told you, my family just took it really offensively. Like, oh my gosh, like this is the third week you haven't come to church, or, oh my goodness, like it's this person's birthday. Like, how come you're not going to come? This is, your uncle. And, those things where they took offense to them because they felt like I was choosing school over them. But it's because, again, they didn't realize how much time I actually needed to commit to my studies, and how much just time overall you don't have for anything else except for grad school. So I think that this is a really important thing to talk about as soon as you've decided that this is your next step and that this is your journey.
Well, and just know too that I did take these steps, but there are still times that I have to remind my
Mm,
family that we
mm-hmm.
took these steps. Like
Yep.
there was one time my mom uh last quarter I was just taking a bunch of finance classes, and data analytics is math is like not my strong suit. And so I'm really struggling, and my mom wanted to go to Phoenix to see her brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to kind of talk to her and ask her to if she can go this quarter. Like, I need your help with my son. I'm not smoothly making it through this quarter. I really need just, can you go next quarter versus going right now? And so
Mm-hmm.
we had to talk about it, and she decided to, yeah, no, you're right. Like I can go in the summer. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
hotter. Obviously, she's going to Phoenix. So she was just continuing that conversation and keeping it open and being honest with her, like, man, I am struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
I know you want to go on this trip, and but she takes Luke Monday nights and Wednesday nights for us.
Mm-hmm.
Although I do have friends and stuff, it's just easier. Grandma drops them off in the morning, and it just, so I can go to class and then study from 10 to 1 a.m., which is what I
Mm-hmm.
usually do because I'm more of a night owl. Then not have to wake up and take him to. At 7.
Mm-hmm.
So just know that these conversations do tend to continue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah, I think that's great. The other thing I want to mention is, previous responsibilities. And I'm sure that many of you have experienced this as you're completing your undergrad, but, setting boundaries of like what you aren't going to be able to help with anymore. So I was telling you about my little brother. I would take him to school, pick him up from school. I would help him with homework. I would help him with, eating, like, everything. And I could not always be the one. I'd be like, can you please ask my brother? Can you please ask my sister-in-law? Can you please ask like somebody else to do some of these things that I've been doing in the role I've been filling? And I think that's really important too, that you kind of set that. that boundary, as difficult as it is.
Yeah. We touched on this a little bit, but this is huge, and not just for the sake of the conversation with your family. It definitely will help. But I have a few cohort members that are there and they're trying to figure out what they want to do while they're in grad school. And unfortunately, time is the commodity you have the least of in grad school. And it takes time to figure out what you want to do, where you want to go, and how you want to accomplish it. And from what I've seen personally, both in my cohort at DU, in my program, and my friends that have gone and gotten my master's programs, my wife has a master's in marine biology and coastal law, and she doesn't use it. She's a teacher. She kind of just went into grad school and figured that was the next step. And, now she's a 7th grade teacher and she's looking at a different master's program. I have a few cohort members that they do not know what they want to do. And it's rough. It's rough watching them work as hard as I'm working and not have that like clear goal in the end. But, definitely try to have those questions answered, because the next thing out of your parents or your family's mouth is going to be these questions. What do you want to study? Where would you want to study? How will you pay for it? When do you want to start? When do you want to finish? And then kind of, goes on and on and on. And if your answer is continuously, I don't know, I'm going to figure it out, I don't know, it's generally a lot of money to go to grad school, and not having these answers to parents and family can be frustrating. A lot of times your family has invested some money and some time into you to get your undergraduate degree, and to hear that you still don't have things figured out, it doesn't help the conversation, doesn't create buy-in. This is all about creating buy-in with your family. So yeah, I'm trying to say this in a nice way. I don't know if that's nice or not, but maybe Sam can help with this a little bit. A softer approach.
No, for sure. I think you said it well. It's just, you gotta make them see that you're not just doing this to do this, that there's a purpose behind it. And so if you can answer these questions, plus what do you want to do with it, which was kind of on the slide before, it's going to make it so much easier for your loved ones around you to support you, and to know how, I don't know, to be easier when there are those times where you can't do something or can't be involved in something. And I think, Rico, the other day you shared, which I thought was so cute, but again, because you have a different experience than me, where I was really doing grad school by myself as a single person. But you were telling me how your wife helps you with your homework, and I thought that was so cute. And so it's like another way to get investment and buy-in, and including your family or your partner or your loved one, whoever, in your experience. So, for Rico, I don't know if you want to share more about that, but having your partner do homework with you, that's so cute and helpful for both of you, probably. For me, my mom's biggest concern, because I am from a low income background, was definitely how I'm going to pay for it. And so talking to her about, well, again, I didn't really talk to her very well about this, but I had a plan. The programs I picked all offered assistantships, and so I was going to get most of my grad school paid for. And that's what ended up happening. Applied to scholarships as well. I got the scholarships. So I got pretty much my graduate school experience paid for, which I think took off some stress for my family. The finish and start thing, they knew it was going to be two years, 2 intense years, a little bit, or they started to see it as I went. But again, I think this stuff up front is so much more helpful than them discovering it with you as you're experiencing it in sometimes a negative way. Hopefully that makes sense, kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's always, this is an inspirational conversation, right? You're creating buy-in. Whenever you're creating buy-in, regardless of whether it's grad school or in business, you want to inspire the person you're talking to. It is not inspirational to hear, I don't know, 10 times, or I'll figure it out. That does not make people want to make moves. And that also doesn't make people feel that it's worth investing in. Nobody
Mhm.
likes to invest in unknowns. Uh,
Mhm.
money is a coward, and so is so are people that want to, help you.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's funny that you think that my wife helping with my homework is cute, because really it's just us arguing about math because I don't get it. And she gets it really easily. And I'm like, this makes no sense. I don't understand why it has to be
Mhm.
this way. And she's like, it just does have to
Yeah.
be this way. But it
Mhm.
does. I mean, she won't let me quit because she's like, I've put in 25 hours of arguing with over this finance homework, and you are not quitting. I don't care how hard it is.
Mhm.
Not going to happen. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing too is once you start taking on more debt, uh, it, it's a bad investment if you quit.
Mhm.
I mean, you have to pay it back, and you don't have the piece of paper, which is rough. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, definitely have as many answers. You don't have to have all the answers, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you don't need to have a plan set by step. Chances are the plan's not going to go exactly to
Mhm.
plan, but having as many answers as you can is definitely going to help. Um,
Mhm. Help
so
them see your vision.
yeah, so barriers, right? There's going to be them. Um, Another thing to think about is how long it's going to take. Sam's program was 2 years, my program was 2 years, my wife's was 1 year, which isn't that bad. If you're planning weddings, or your friends are planning weddings, or your sisters or cousins, or there's going to be a lot of new babies around, um, those things are going to come into this conversation. And then how much time it'll take daily, right? I mean, I'm the type of person, I have taken an IQ test, did not score incredibly high. I'm not the smartest, naturally gifted person. So when I read things, I have to read them a couple times. So a lot of my cohort members, they read something once, they got it, they can move on. A lot of times I got to read things 2 or 3 times. I have to double confirm things. It's just kind of how my brain works. So time is definitely the thing that I have to take when I'm doing my coursework, especially when it comes to math and some of the concepts that I don't naturally get.
Mhm.
Um, so that daily time, that weekly time, and then that
Mhm.
that monthly time, right? And then give and take. I mean, I my son wants to play hockey, and I want to make that happen for him. So Wednesdays, for a while there, I was taking him to hockey. So I'd pick him up
Mhm.
early from school. We had an agreement. He's only 5, so he didn't really hold up his end of the agreement very well. But we had an agreement that I would pick him up early from school. He would do hockey, and then he would, entertain himself for the last half of that day, so that we can do hockey together, so that he can go to skating class. And last half of that day was Wednesday, and I would be finishing up work and maybe getting some reading done, and then grandma would pick him up so that I could go to class. So just stuff like that. And then, to go into dependence, it's really hard to get my 5-year-old to understand what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I talk a lot with him. I don't ever want my son to feel like I'm not playing with him, because I'd rather be working on
Mhm.
finance homework. So a lot of times I'll sit him with me, and I'll read to him what I'm studying, and he has zero
Mhm.
interest and goes into the other room and plays with his toys. And but telling him, like, hey, I would rather be playing with you right now. There's nothing I would rather be doing more in the world than climbing on the ground and playing Hot Wheels. But unfortunately, I have to get this homework done, and it's due today. And um yeah, so just kind of having those talks, and making sure he understands as much as he can, or he or she or your kids. And then we talked a little bit about this, but taking care of your mental health.
Mhm.
Everybody I've talked to who's been through grad school or is currently in grad school has thought about quitting. Seriously thought about quitting, like what it would take. And all I have to do is drop this class, things get better, I can go back to my life, my
Mhm.
job's not so bad, like whatever, I don't care about the glass ceiling, I'm
Mhm.
still making good money. Like, and you start like getting real about that. And then, we talked about, I literally told my best friend, if I quit, I give you full permission to break into my house and do whatever you want to my body until I go back. And my wife's the same way. She's like, yeah, I mean, you can quit. I'll break your arm, but like, you can do whatever you want. Um, so yeah, those conversations are important around your group, your network, your support system.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, I don't have any dependents. And at the time, again, I think of my little brother as my son, but he is not. At the end of the day, he's not my son. So very different than for Rico. But again, I do wish I would have had more of a conversation with him, because I think that there's even now a little resentment of me, taking a step back in his life in some ways. And that's really hard for a kid to experience, to not, have someone who plays a significant role in their life, and then, have them kind of feel like they're abandoning you in a way. And it was only for 2 years, but I think still it was a pretty intense time. And so I wish I would have talked to him more about like why I'm doing this, because I think I would tell everybody else, like I really want to do this for my family, especially my little brother's name is Jaden, especially Jaden. But I never told Jaden, and I think that would have been so much better. And then, like I told you, with the rest of my family, I think it would have been better too.
Yeah, two
And
years 2 years to a 16-year-old, that's 1/8 of his life.
yeah.
That's a significant amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Grand scheme of things, if he's 70 years old, that's not a whole lot of time, but that's
Mm-hmm.
2 years of like prime
Right.
his life. I mean, that's tough.
Mm-hmm. It is. So I think I made a lot of mistakes as far as how I communicated with my family. And, hopefully, sometimes I still want to get my PhD or something like that. I'm not sure if I'll end up doing that or not, but I've definitely practiced some of these things a little bit more with my husband now. And then, eventually when we have kids and if they're old enough to understand some of the stuff that we pointed out. But communication is just key in helping them see that picture again as much as they can, because again, like they haven't experienced what you're experiencing, and so you have to tell them as much as possible. And I think, again, I like that story that Rico shared about like reading to his son, sharing with them like what you're learning, bringing them to campus, meeting your cohort friends, that are in your classes together, stuff like that, so they can see pieces of your life, especially if they're kids. If they're your partner, probably the same stuff. I don't know. Like I said, I was single while I was in grad school, but that's some of the stuff I think of now in ways that I would try to include my husband a little bit better.
Yeah, it's tough. It's last night
Mm-hmm.
this quarter is really easy. It's built that way. Like our last quarter is supposed to be like super easy. And
Mm-hmm.
so class is usually from 6 to 10. Yeah, I got out at like 7:10 last night and we were done. We're supposed to meet with our groups, but we've been meeting at weird times and stuff. So like we all as a cohort went and grabbed a drink at the Pioneer down the street, and they have like a outdoor patio. And I invited my wife. Um, she came and had a beer with all of us and talked with us and got to hear our war stories. And yeah, that inclusion is huge. Um, at least for me, it's made things easier than they would have been. And I think it's tough with grad school a lot of times because you're sacrificing a lot, and it's not just you sacrificing, you're kind of sacrificing and bringing your family with you. Some family members can almost feel like you're being selfish, like you're aiming too far out of reach and out of
Mm-hmm.
their realm.
Mm-hmm.
I have cousins that I literally don't even talk to anymore because they think I'm like too
Mm-hmm.
uppity, or they think I'm too smart for them. And
Mhm.
I don't think that, but they feel that, and they feel like I maybe cut them out. As much as I communicated well with my nuclear
Mhm.
family, I didn't talk to my cousins a lot, and I don't now because I'm busy.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Yeah, and I think giving yourself grace is so important, and telling yourself it's okay to not be there sometimes. Because even now, like recently, I think my brothers have started maturing, but you know, for a while they would just throw it in my face. They're like, well, you weren't there. They would say stuff like that to me, or like, well, you don't know because, you always did school instead of family stuff. Or even though I was there, still pretty often, I think more than most people with their family, like we spend a lot of time together. But still, they'd be like, oh, you weren't there, or oh, you don't know. You always just did your school thing and stuff like that. And then now, at least my big brother, he's been like, I I see why you made that sacrifice. Like I can see why this was important to you, and how much it's helped all of us because of that sacrifice that you made. And for him to acknowledge that just literally so recently, I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe he said this to me." But again, I like to tell students this because I think this is important. But I was able to buy a house. I have my dream car that's outside my window. I gave my mama a car because she didn't have one and hers broke down. I've been able to help my family financially, and that was always, again, one of my big motivations is like I want to be financially stable. I want to help my family be financially stable. And I just had the, like I said, that this vision, and now my brother is starting to see it as he is maturing in his life and growing in his life, and hopefully getting closer to finishing school himself, stuff like that.
yeah, that ties directly into the next one. Uh,
Yay.
so, is it worth it, right? Like, so that's the ultimate question, the biggest question. From my perspective, and it sounds like from Sam's perspective, we have the answer. Uh, I don't know. I've just seen, one thing is I've seen more and more job postings with the preferred qualification section, and
Mhm.
master's is always listed in there. And
Mhm.
these are for jobs that 10 years ago, I mean, if you had a bachelor's degree, they were excited. Now it's like, oh, well, we'd prefer someone with a master's, which I think is crazy. Um, but I mean, it used to be 25% of people have a bachelor's degree in America, and that number's creeped up to almost to around 40%. And it is a
Whoa.
differentiator, right? I mean, it's a
Mhm.
huge gap between those who have bachelor's degrees and those who have master's degrees, especially if you're a student of color. It's like single digits of, if you have a company that's trying to be diverse, but they have these preferred qualifications, if you're a student of color and you have a master's degree, I mean, it's a huge differentiator to the robots that pick these, resumes out of thousands of applicants. Also, Denver, when I grew up here, was a real blue collar town, and it's become, we've had what 10,000 people a month moving here for a while. A lot of those people had bachelor's degrees at least. Um, so it's
Mhm.
becoming a very educated town. And then, like Sam touched on, money is freedom. Being able to buy your mom that car, even if you don't get to a point where Sam's at, she must be bawling. Uh,
No.
to buy your parents a car, just the fact that your parents never have to buy you meals again.
Mhm.
They can shop for
Yes.
themselves. You don't have to live with them anymore. You don't need them to
Mhm.
help you buy clothes. I mean, you
Mhm.
don't need them for anything other than to just be a part of your life, right? And be supportive.
Mhm.
But from a financial standpoint, if your parents are taking care of one less human being financially,
Mhm.
that's a raise. I
Mhm.
always look at money and salaries as it's not the amount of money you make, it's the amount of money you keep. If
Mm.
you're helping your parents keep more of their money,
Mhm.
you're putting money in their pocket essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and
Dang.
then from a career standpoint, I mean, there's less holding you back, right? I mean, you're one of the most,
Mhm.
top 15 educated people in the the United States, you're kind of in that elite group. I think in some cases, depending on the degree, it's like, less than 10% or less than 8% of people have an MBA. So like the top 8%, I mean, it just gives you that thing. It's kind of hard working in higher ed. I'm sure you agree, Sam. Everybody in higher ed has like a PhD. It's crazy, or at least an EDD. Like everybody you talk to is doctor something.
Yeah.
So but when I get out and I talk to like my friends and stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
you're the only one I know who has a master's degree,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
I forget that being in the MSU Denver atmosphere. And
Mm-hmm.
the flexibility it gives you later. I'm going to school now. My son's 5. I'll be graduating. Child amnesia hits at around 7. So hopefully he won't remember too much of me not being able to play with him. And he'll remember more from 7 years old on that I've always had a master's and had career flexibility. And I've been at
Mm-hmm.
every game and recital and
Mm-hmm.
as many of those things as I can be, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to be done and start being in his life as much as he'll let me. I always say you have like 13 years, right? Like in 8 years, when my son's 13, he's not going to care that I'm at game. I mean, he'll care, but like, he wants to, he doesn't want to hang out. So I only have 8 more years of like him being this loving kid that wants to be around me all the time. And then he's going to get, I'm an idiot. I don't know anything.
Oh,
And he's doing his thing. So
that's so funny. I put this in the chat, but I am going to share it out loud just because we're recording. But to add to the statistics that Rico was sharing, only 30% of first-gen students apply to grad programs. And there's not that much research. Tisha and I actually tried to research this last year, but there isn't so much research out there about what happens to us once we're in graduate programs. And so in some ways, I think it's worth it for the community, the setting that stage, that precedence, paving the road for others. I think that's so much of what we do for our own families, but also the broader first gen population. This year we actually had more selections, but last year when Tish and I were going through and we were trying to pick, who should we have like presenting, who should we have, speaking, we had the roughest time thinking of first gen people who could come and talk to you all about their experiences because there's just not a lot. And so I think that you all are role models so much right now, and you'll be a role model even more when you get your graduate degrees, like whatever kind you end up getting. So that's another big thing that I wanted to mention.
yeah, there are stats out there. They're called pulling up the ladder stats. So women tend to pull up the ladder after themselves. They climb the rungs and then they yank the ladder up right behind them. So women like Sheryl Sandberg have gotten in trouble for not mentoring people into graduate programs, PhD programs, women in particular. But from stats that I've seen, when it comes to, and this was the big kind of ending of the marketing conversation, the marketing thing that I went to that kind of brought all of this on was when you get one student of color, like very rarely do you not get more. Like with one comes many more. So like I started my MBA last September. I have another kid who started after me, I went to my high school and I spoke to him when I was an undergrad. And I was working for the Miami Dolphins at the time. And so he remembered talking to me and talked about, we ran into each other at a hockey game. And he was telling me he remembers me from this presentation and that, been looking at DU's MBA program. And I gave him my phone number and I was like, let's connect. I'll walk you through the application process. I'll walk you through, the interview. And he started this last fall. And then I have another friend who's a neighbor of mine, Alex, who just started 2 weeks ago. So just from me coming to this program, there have been 2 more after me that were in similar situations, first generation college students want to get their MBA, and talking to me made them feel like they could do it, right? So like there really is a lot less of the pulling up the ladder with first generation students. Like all of my cousins have been talking about master's programs now. And I'm like, you can do, you guys are smarter than me. I have to read things 10 times to get it. I mean, as hard as it was for me, I really believe in you. I think you're worth the investment, and those are big words that a lot of us don't hear. You're worth the investment, and and then understanding, like, especially when you get accepted, that the reason you're accepted is because somebody at that school believes you can do it. There is something to say about numbers and keeping enrollment up and stuff, but if they don't believe in you, you're not going to get accepted into the grad program. So somebody already believes in you. That may not be super significant, but to a lot of us, it's really significant. Like, you've made it, you're in. So finish, do this thing, make that person right.
I love that. One last thing that I want to say is that I think degrees are so powerful, and being able to do what you love or you enjoy because of your bachelor's or your master's or your doctorate, that just is such a unique and special thing. Like, how many people in your life can you think of who actually like their job or who are passionate about their job? Not very many. That's not very common. But because you've pursued your bachelor's and then your graduate degree, you have that opportunity, different than our parents, different than our friends, people around us who haven't done that journey. We get to pick what we want to do and where we want to be. And just like on this slide, it says, like, we have that flexibility of doing other things too. And that's a lot more. My mama has worked the same few types of jobs her entire life, all low paying. She was my lunch lady, then she worked in the school bus system. That's where she works now. Went back to being my lunch lady. It was just very few options, but you have a ton of options because of your bachelor's and your graduate degree. And I think that's just a tremendous thing to think about.
So Alicia says sometimes she feels that her parents feel like she's talking down to them. That's a tough one. I got around that by bringing them in. So DU had like open houses, and they I think they mainly want students to just go. But I brought my wife and my mom one time. We were supposed to like meet for dinner, and I was like, well, I want to check out DU, and so like I bring them into the process of it, instead of just talking to them about it. When you're filling out your financial aid, like, sit down with them and do it. That's my suggestion. I got to apply for this Grad Plus program. Put the call on speaker when you're talking to the financial aid department, and ask your questions, and let your mom know she can ask questions too. To let her know that you don't, as much as I pushed, you should have all the answers, right? When you don't have the answers, when it comes to financial aid or how, your application should be, or your resume for applying, admit those things. Like, it's better to be transparent and not, I don't know. I feel like I'm arguing against myself a little bit, but you won't, as much as you should know everything, you won't. And the things that you don't know, be transparent with them, with everybody about it. Like, I don't understand how this financial aid is going to work. And so try to include her or your family when you're talking to these, these financial aid advisors, or these academic advisors, or admissions officers. There's a lot that goes into getting into grad school.
Yeah, I want to add to that. But I experienced something very similarly, so much so that my mom, I think I've told some people about this before, but my mom would be like, don't use your college talk around me. Just talk normal. She'd always say that stuff to me and get mad if I, used too big of words or told her any kind of phrase that they might use in college. And I think for a while, it would have been better to, like Rico said, Rico's got wisdom, to, include them in things, bring them to things, do stuff with them that's in your college experience. So I think that is a huge aspect. And then talking to them about what you're learning. I think that would have been helpful for my mama, which is stuff that I've been talking to her about more so now, of like, oh, I was learning about this, and like explaining to her more, not like I'm teaching her or using the word against her or being, like sometimes she didn't like when I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a microaggression or something. She'd be like, oh, she would get so annoyed. But I'd explain to her, like, oh, I learned this about microaggressions and blah, 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 like explaining the whole thing to her. And then she'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, like someone said that to me too, and she would get, it seemed like she was more involved with me. And so I've been doing that lately, but I did not do that when I was in school. And so I don't know if that will help you, Alicia, but that's kind of starting to help me, is just helping her learn what I've been learning and talking about stuff like that instead of just using it around them. And then the other thing is just kind of in time, I feel like it gets better. I don't know. There's just some stuff that my mama and I only recently could see eye to eye on, or that she was okay with me saying in front of her or doing in front of her, stuff like that. So I don't know. Those are my best tips. Does anyone else have any questions? Julie, can you put our website and stuff in the chat? Thank you.
Either we did so good that there's no questions, or it's so bad that there's no question.
One of the two.
I learned a whole lot. I really resonated with both of your experiences. I'm really appreciative for this interface. Keep it up. Like, this is amazing for me. Only question I do have is, when talking with your family and they are from a background where, say, they haven't even completed high school, how can you structure those conversations to where they can understand what you're going through without having to get into like everything?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, coming from a disadvantaged background and networking, what was the best ways of getting yourself into different levels or environments?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I can take this networking one.
I was hoping you would take the other one and I would do the networking, but go for it.
For me, I like to admit the difference, my different situation, right? Especially in an environment like DU, everybody's the same. Everybody looks the same. Everybody's got a trust fund. I mean, it's I hate to like categorize DU students, but it is what it is. Like, they're either there because their work's paying for it, or they're there because their parents have a Amex Black Card and just swipe away, And so I have the unique story. Everybody else looks the same, talks the same, has the same situation. I'm the one with a kid. We started with a cohort of 12. 3 of us had kids. I'm the only one graduating. That's it. The other 2 didn't make it.
Wow.
There were 3 people of color. I'm the only one graduating. The other 2 didn't make it. Like, my story is different. My story is unique. So in networking situations, I'm the, if you want to go talk to Brad or Tanner, you can. They're there. There's 20 of them, but I'm the difference. So embracing your difference and bringing people into your world and sharing your world, because you have the unique story. You're the one, rising. everybody else is just, and especially not especially, I guess a lot of times in grad school, it's people that have a lot of advantages. They've, their parents went to grad school, their grandparents went to grad. It's just the next thing for them to do. So whatever your differences are, like embrace those things. Don't
Mm.
let the imposter syndrome set in. And like I said, if you got accepted, you're there because somebody believes in you.
Mm-hmm.
So start seeing what that person sees and start
And then,
working.
yeah, thank you. And then, how do you not sound like a bleeding heart then? It's
I mean,
That's a
always,
great question.
always have a hard time with that.
yeah, I'm just real about it. Like, hey, like I mean, even today, I DoorDash every morning. I DoorDash in the morning from 6 to around 8 a.m. And then I DoorDash from 5 to 7 p.m. And because I need extra money. I'm saving for a house right now,
Hmm.
and I go to grad school and I'm in 2 different departments. Like I just talk about it kind of candidly. Like, yeah, I work really hard. I study hard. I work hard. I will out hustle anybody in this room all day, every day. And so I
Mhm.
just kind of say it candidly, not like I'm suffering I mean, it does suck. I wish all my bills were paid and I had I didn't have to think about finances, but unfortunately I do. And in spite of that, I'm here anyway, you know. Go ahead, Sam.
What I want to add to this is, because I, again, different approach than Rigo. I did not tell anyone my business when in grad school, except for like a few trusted people. And so for me, networking was more feeling people out who I thought I could trust with my experience. And sometimes that was a good approach, and sometimes it wasn't, because I definitely got myself in a spot that was difficult to get out of at a certain point. But I I just want to say I think sometimes you have to use your story to your benefit. And what I mean by that is, again, like if you're a first gen or whatever other marginalized identities that you have, when you're writing your essay to get into college, to get into the graduate program, use that story. And when you're writing for scholarships or when you're networking with people, like you gotta, I guess, kind of start learning the skill of what pieces of my story do they want to hear that's going to help me get what I need. And I know that sounds a little messed up, but it just helps you. And like I said, I think there was a lot of people who were willing to help me because I started to learn how to tailor my story to what they were looking for. And especially because I was one of the only women of color, one of the only first gen students, low income students in my program that I went to. So I guess to not sound like a bleeding heart, I think you have to show them like your hard work and your resiliency, but kind of tailoring your message to them.
That's the nice way to do it. I take more the end of 8 Mile approach, the movie. I admit everything that is wrong and own it, and nobody can say anything bad about you. Nobody can
Mhm,
feel bad for me. I don't mind that I work hard. It doesn't
mhm.
bother me. Like, obviously I would prefer a trust fund. That would be nice, but that's not in the
Yeah.
cards, whatever. So I take that approach. I'm Eminem at the end of the mile,
I love that.
flat out.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
own it.
I'm not that way. Let's see.
I do think, Sam, I do think that was very helpful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
give me the
I
example
really
of
do appreciate that.
Yeah.
but
And
I'm
then,
I don't think it sounds wrong at all. I think it's pointed,
yeah.
especially for us first geners. Like, we don't always know how to navigate
Mm-hmm.
through those discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And about the high school parent piece, I'm still discovering that. So my dad, he dropped out and got his GED because he ended up having my big brother when he was in high school. So he he is a difficult one, but we also don't have the greatest relationship overall.
Ditto.
Yeah. And so explaining to him my college experience and going through grad school definitely was difficult for different reasons than with my mama and my stepdad. And like I said, I'm still figuring this out, but again, some things I think just take time. And with my dad, I'm discovering that because, recently he was just like, Mija, I admire how hard you've worked, and I admire how independent you are and how much you've gained because of that hard work and that independence. And my dad never says anything positive to me at all. Like, he even told my husband not to marry me. Like, that's how extreme our relationship is. I'm making it a little bit more dramatic than it is, but
No, you're fine. Yeah, I get that.
yeah. And so for him, again, within this last year, it's like my big brother and then my dad, and my mama sometimes and my stepdad, like all these people like starting to say things that they realize like all of this hard work has paid off, all of this sacrifice has paid off, and it's just taken time. And so I don't know if that helps you, but that's my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
So my dad, my some stories a little similar. My dad sees hard work as like physical manual labor.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no other hard work, like
Mm-hmm.
studying and going to school. Like that's, like anybody who's done it knows that it's hard work, and it's a different type of hard work, right? Like it's not physical labor, but it's mentally exhausting. It's time consuming,
Mm-hmm.
and so it took me a long time to get my dad to understand the importance of this stuff. But yeah, you kind of have to go at their speed.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's not somebody I can nudge. For a long time, he saw me like I'm not, I come home and I smell great. I'm not sweaty. Like you don't work hard. But I think he started to realize like, yeah, I may not work hard like you think the only way hard work works, but like I am making more money, I am tired, and then, a lot of it was just kind of something we didn't talk about much. And then my dad's seen how I am with my son, that I do have the time to take him ice skating. That's something my dad didn't even take me to practice. He never saw me even play football, and he wishes he had. And now he gets to see me because of my hard work. He gets to see the payoff, and then I'm able to do these things and hopefully in the future do them more. So I think a lot of it, for at least in my experience, has been like, explaining a little bit that it is, hard work. And then the other thing too is, if you find happiness, if you end up being happy with what you're doing, and you're really, really happy working, and you're happy with where your life is. I mean, in the end, at the bare bottom of being a parent, that's what every parent wants for their kids. Even if you think like your parents are disengaged and not that interested, if they see you like super, super happy accomplishing the things you want to accomplish, the dots will start to click, they'll start to connect, I think. At least it has for me.
I want to add another thing that I'm thinking of based on what people are writing in the chat. But Julie, I hope it's okay if I read out or just highlight what you were saying about your mama's excitement over children versus your degree. But my mom is the same. Like, she was way more excited when I got engaged than she was when I finished my master's degree. And that hurt me so hardcore. And so again, I think telling your family and your loved ones what you need from them can be helpful. Not always, but can be. And so I tell my mama, like, I would rather you ask me a question about my job, or, maybe during grad school, I would want you to ask me questions about what I'm learning. I want you to ask me questions about my friends and my professors, and not about who I'm dating, or not about, when I'm going to get pregnant. That means so much more to me and tells me that you love me versus you asking about the things that just you care about. Because that's not, at this moment in my life, that's not the most important thing for me. And I did do that towards the end of my graduate school experience. And I told her, I was like, I just want you to ask me about how work is, like, not about dating. And she took that so serious and like actually started doing that. but she's still my mom. And so again, she's still like about the kids and junk like that. But it really helped. And I was like, again, man, I wish I would have been doing this stuff so much sooner. But again, tell them what you need.
Yeah, I mentioned in the chat that I think it's funny. You can walk into Wendy's starving and tell a complete stranger, like, I am starving to death. I need a hamburger. Please help me. Here's some money. I'll get you a hamburger. But like, you go to your family starving for this attention or this thing, and we don't tell them, like we don't tell, like, hey, why not just tell your mom, like, you need her to tell you that she's proud of you. She probably will. I mean, she probably is, right? But we like have this, I don't know, like we think our parents should know, and they don't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a parent, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to not kill my kid, basically, or let him kill himself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my mama was even like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was pressuring you. And I was like, yes, like, I don't have a boyfriend. I'm not going to have a boyfriend soon. Like, and then my husband came in my life, but I was just like, stop. And, and it really changed our relationship too. I think it helped. And yeah, siblings are very helpful.
Yeah, I just commented to Alicia and said, I mean, we help raise our parents as much as they're raising us. We're also raising them, right? I mean, especially if your parents were kids when they had you.
My sister, I had a very interesting conversation yesterday with my mom because I'm going to be starting my field experience to become a teacher, and she was like so